trip of Prime Minister Modi to several European countries, Germany, Spain, France, and also a visit to Russia is important partly in itself and partly in a larger global context. If I go to the latter first, President Trump has just been in Europe, and in the course of the last several months there have been indications about international agreements being called into question. There have also been some questions in regard to protectionism, and therefore a country like India, which is a growing economy, currently the IMF estimates are that it might grow this year at somewhere between 7 to 7.5%, and an economy which has just overtaken Britain, so it becomes the 5th largest economy in the world. As far as Germany is concerned, the Indo-German relations are concerned, these have traditionally been very friendly. They have been very close over a long period of time. Germany is one of the major investors and largest trading partner in the European Union for India. And while the Indo-German trade doesn't quite compare to the China-Germany trade, at the same time it is important both for Germany as well as India to keep this relationship going, both on the political as well as on the economic front. Plus, of course, education, science and technology, and a variety of other areas in which Germany and India have cooperated with each other. So I would see the importance of this visit partly in the bilateral context, partly in a larger global context, where soon the Chinese Prime Minister, I think beginning tomorrow, will be in Germany. India and China are also close partners, both economically as well as politically. And in the context of both having emerged as major economies in the world, I think it is a signal that with the European Union, with Germany itself, which is the largest member of the European Union, the two countries, the Asian giants, if I may say so, are working together in order to step in where there are gaps because of changes that have taken place elsewhere in the world.
Professor Ye, what is your take on the significance of Mr. Modi's visit to Europe and to Russia this time?
I think for Premier Modi, it's a very important visit to the Europe because it's the time to test his theory on the domestic development, especially on the economy issue. We all know Premier Modi's theory is quite different with the then Premier Manmohan Singh. Manmohan Singh preferred the Indians' economy rising should rely on his domestic market, but Premier Modi more preferred the international cooperation, and this time to engage with Europe will lay the very consolidated foundation for India and Europe to launch their multilateral cooperation and boost Indians' external-oriented economy. And so in this context, I think this is very significant, but we need time to verify what's the actual achievement made by this visit, especially we also hear that on the FTA negotiation didn't go very smoothly.
Let's talk about the FTA in just a moment, but first let me bring you a short soundbite from what Mr. Modi said during a joint press conference with his host Angela Merkel. Here it is.
I think the importance of partnership is of course beneficial for not only the two countries that are involved, but also this partnership, I feel, is something that we have always given consideration to make sure it is useful in the global context.
Ambassador Rangachari, how do you read into Mr. Modi's words? Why do you think he's there to emphasize the global context of the bilateral relationship between India and Germany?
Well, there have been many changes that have taken place in the recent past, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, as far as the European Union is concerned, the decision taken in Britain to leave the European Union was a major blow. It was not expected. It was not expected in the European Union. It was unexpected insofar as Britain itself was concerned. The Prime Minister, who was David Cameron, resigned precisely because of that. And the negotiations for Britain to leave European Union have just about to commence, and they're going to take a certain period of time. Therefore, within Europe, given the economic difficulties, because the rates of growth are still only hovering around 1%, and the forecast for current year as well as next year is not very much more than that. At the same time, there are political issues, as I mentioned just now, Brexit. So And then when you read it together with the visit of President Donald Trump of the United States to Europe, where there was a great deal of disappointment in regard to the decision of the United States on protectionism, on the issue of climate change agreement, Paris 2015 and so on. I think both India as well as Germany are looking, as I'm sure the Chinese Prime Minister, when he goes to Germany later this week, will be doing, are looking to see how countries like Germany, India, China can work together in order to step into the breach and try and make sure that the economic and political evolution remains stable. And I think it is in that context that we should look at the statement that the Prime Minister made of global developments and importance and relevance in the global context.
Professor Ye, now a lot of people are saying the fact that the Western camp is seeing some split, in their opinion, especially after what Angela Merkel said about the United States and UK. There is an opening of greater opportunity, of greater role to be played by countries from outside of Europe, namely China, and obviously India seems also to want to get in there and raise its international profile. How do you read into Mr. Modi's statement just now?
Of course, we should admit that India's role in the global economy is rising very rapidly. Actually, the European EU is still the largest economy in the world, and the Indian record the fastest growth last year in the whole world, measured by the big economy, not the small one. So in this case, I think India's cooperation with Europe will lay a very good foundation for the world global economy to stabilize the world economy. But we also need notice the one essential effect that the Indian economy is still domestic market oriented. So India's role for the globalization in the context of the economy issue is not as large as Europe, US or China. So it represents the future is very bright, but not necessarily reflect the current reality. But I think since India was accelerate its domestic economy development, also try to strengthen the linkage with the international market, this role between the Indian and Europe cooperation will be play the more important and positive role in the future.
Briefly, Professor Ye, is that also the reason why the free trade agreement talks between Europe and India has been stalled? Briefly, please.
I don't think it's only between the India and Europe. It's a global, worldwide phenomenon. Actually, free trade now it seems that it's already lost its attraction compared with the past years. So we need some new thinking, try to stabilize the world economy order, but not only signed bilateral FTA.
Well, Ambassador Rangachari, now you were mentioning Chinese Premier Li Keqiang's visit, which really it seems to be a coincidence that the two would be coinciding their visit to Germany at this particular moment. And when we talk about India, we cannot ignore the fact that India, or the Indian government, or the Indian press have been quite skeptical of the One Belt, One Road initiative that China has been trying to promote. What kind of potential cooperation do you think India and China can have, or really is there, just downright competition between the two sides?
Well, one quick word insofar as the FTA is concerned. This FTA actually has become, is under negotiation with the European Union, and hopefully some of the issues that have been flagged on either side, as far as the Indian side is concerned, free movement in terms of labor and professionals and so on, that is an issue. And as far as the European side is concerned, they would like to have guarantees across the board on a number of issues. Now, therefore, the process of negotiation is on, and hopefully it will come through in a not distant future. Insofar as India and China is concerned, if we work backwards, current projections are that in the course of the next 10 to 15 years, China would become either the number one, it is already the number two economy. India would also be probably the number third economy. And therefore, for two large economies to work together with the European Union, which is currently the largest, makes a great deal of sense, both for stability and for prosperity not just in our region, that is the Asian region, but also insofar as the European Union, as far as Europe and global economy is concerned. I think that is how we should look at this. Even if the visit happens to be coincidental, the interests are more long lasting.
Thank you very much. We have to leave it there. That was TCA Renga Chari, former Indian ambassador, and Professor Ye Hailing, director of the Center for South Asia Studies with the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. And as usual, here is my point. Now, it's very clear that Prime Minister Modi's intention is to wow European investors and increase India's international profile against what could be seen as the shadow of China's economic growth. Competition is not a bad thing, as it provides an incentive to do better to stay ahead, but is it a wise thing to compete simply because of cynicism? Now, the answer is probably no. Mr. Modi takes pride in the democratic values his country shares with Germany before and among other things. But from the example of Ms. Merkel's disappointment with the US and UK, shared values are not the guarantee of good political ties, even less so for good business relations. For India to step up considerably its trade with foreign countries, a lot of effort would be needed. To have an open mind might be a helpful first step.
You know I love 'em all.